Hello, everyone. Let's begin this series of conversations. I am Dr. Raghav Malik, cataract and refractive surgeon at Center for Sight, and we are going to start this series of conversations. And I, as a host, am very excited to bring to you this series. Why? Because इस सीरीज में हम सिर्फ ऑप्थेल्मोलॉजी या मेडिसिन डिस्कस नहीं करेंगे. वी आर गोइंग इनटू द ह्यूमन साइड ऑफ द मेडिसिन. सो बेसिकली डॉक्टर के माइंड में क्या चलता है, डॉक्टर की स्टोरी क्या है. So we are going to be on the other side of the microscope, so we know the story and the journey of the operating surgeon. Today, our spotlight is on refractive surgery, and our first guest today is none other than Dr. Rupal Shah. Welcome, ma'am.
Thanks.
It's a very big honor of mine to introduce ma'am to you all. So the fraternity of ophthalmology and beyond knows ma'am very, very well. She's very popular. She is very fondly known as the queen or the mother of the smile surgery. So I'll just give you a small introduction of ma'am. So ma'am started her refractive surgery journey in 1994. And to put things into perspective, I was just 4 years old then, not even in class 1.
Thank you for making me feel so old.
That's when ma'am did her first LASIK surgery. And it's now in 2024 or rather 25, we're just jumping into, and ma'am is still one of the top refractive surgeons of our country. She was the first in the world to do the single incision smile surgery as it is today. And she was the pioneer and the first initial researcher who was helping Zeiss to bring smile into the world. She also was the first person in the world to do the Circle software, which is used to do enhancements after smile surgery. मैम थोड़ा डिटेल में बताएंगे उसके बारे में. I won't keep the talk very technical, थोड़ा casual रखेंगे. But ma'am has trained 2,000 ophthalmologists in refractive surgery till date. 2,000. I am one of them. And ma'am conducts an annual, is it annual or semi-annual, ma'am?
No, semi-annual.
It's a semi-annual intensive LASIK workshop. The 77th was just wrapped up, which was attended by 20 ophthalmologists.
More than that.
More than 20 ophthalmologists, refractive surgeons who ma'am trains every 6 months. So you can imagine how much experience she has. She has done more than 1 lakh refractive surgeries till now, which I don't know if that is the most in the world, but yes, it is a very, very high number. And also ma'am was invited to AAO 2020 on the subspecialty day, which is also a very big achievement in itself. I can go on and on and on. Ma'am has won so many awards and medals for refractive surgery. Ma'am, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Raghav. It's been some time since I've felt so good. Thank you. You can do the introduction again.
But these stats are staggering, ma'am. They are so humbling to be in the same room as you and to get the opportunity to learn with you and to be your colleague, if I may call myself that.
Course.
That is truly a humbling experience.
Thank you so much.
So, ma'am, I'll just start. I'll go into it. I just want to know that how was the journey for you? Being
The
a
refractive
woman?
surgery
Refractive
journey?
surgery. I just want to know the refractive surgery part of
I
it.
think that's the journey that I would really want to describe. I started doing refractive surgery in 1994. I was also quite young, not as young as you, but not very old either. It was the beginning of the career. The lasers were new. There were only 2 laser centers in the whole of India when we got the laser to Mumbai first. And it was an experience of a lifetime because it was something totally new. We didn't know whether it would work. We were actually trading on to the unknown with no money, no experience, and no overall experience of the laser treatments all across the world. So nothing to back on to. But we just ventured into it like an adventure. And we had to undergo a lot of ups and downs before we could actually find our bearing and started making new centers. We started with the first center in Mumbai in 1994, the next one in Vadodara in 1996. And after that, there was no looking back. And one by one, we started putting up centers all across India. And by the time we merged with Center for Sight, which was even at that time a really advanced looking chain of eye hospitals across India, we had 22 of those laser centers in our kitty. So it was really a merger which was meant to be, because we were looking at a person who would be able to take this forward and also retain the value. And that's where we found Center for Sight.
But ma'am, I want to know that, okay, I would say I am the third generation of refractive surgeons. You were the first. At that time, so we are just following your footsteps. We know what the surgery is. We know what the lasers are, the types of surgeries. Now there are advancements in technology.
Yes.
But for your time when there was, you had no YouTube, you had no videos, you probably...
everything was self-learned.
There were not
we
even books.
made our mistakes.
Yes, there were not even books back then.
Yes.
Because books were written
books
by
were
you.
also very, very few.
Yes.
And there were very few experienced people all across the world with very few years of experience. Because in the world, the laser refractive surgery actually started only by 87, 88. Wow. So we were the early people to start the refractive surgery in India. And so I would not say that we didn't make our mistakes. We did make our mistakes. We learned from that. And that's how the LASIK course came into being, because we didn't want the wheel to be reinvented. We wanted the same mistakes not to be repeated by other people. And it was also a need, because we wanted to set up centers where we needed experienced doctors. So we trained initially our own doctors and put them up in those centers. But then there was a demand from all over, because the laser refractive surgery started becoming very popular all across the world. And before the FDA approval occurred, the process of FDA approval went through in the US, the world was ready for it. And there was already multiple centers in the Europe as well as other parts of the world. But in India itself, we were much ahead of the US. And that has been the case in refractive surgery, I think, even today.
I believe so, ma'am, because even at my age, I'm at the early part of my career, but still with possibly the population जो हमारी country में है, इतने सारे patients की demands हैं, so I think we are far ahead of the West.
You are also yourself involved in the silk study, aren't you, Raghav?
Yes, I am, ma'am. But today is all about you. I want to know about your journey. कि वो आपका first case, that first LASIK. I'm sure, ma'am, you did your LASIK
No,
first?
I started with PRK.
Okay.
But the first PRK was also quite exhilarating, because it was something that we never thought that we would be able to do in India at that age and that time. And the results were speaking for themselves. So it was really a very, very exciting path that we thought we had taken. We worked really hard to make it a success. We went around learning from wherever we could. So I went to Germany soon after. So I left my 5-month-old baby at home and went to Germany to look at the procedures and see the results, learn the correct techniques, came back in a couple of weeks and started the first center in India, in Bombay. From there on, we went around in the entire Gujarat and Maharashtra and some part of Kolkata and a lot of parts of Andhra Pradesh, where we set up all these centers. And we did a lot of public awareness programs. So we would hire a hall and give a very nice video presentation of what the procedure involves, what care needs to be taken, who can do it, in simple little video of about half an hour. And after that, we would have a conversation with the audience. And that used to work really well because there was so much interest generated. And I remember once in Ahmedabad when we conducted this program, we needed to repeat it 3 times because the hall was so full.
Wow.
And it was like a big town hall where people were sitting even on the aisles and the steps. So that was the excitement at that time.
Okay.
And from then on, it has now become a norm. So if somebody is wearing glasses today, they know that they can go to a LASIK center and get it done. And there are a number of options available today of the way in which you can do laser refractive surgery, with a lot of price points. So it can cater to almost everybody's needs and can give good results today with the maturity of the procedures that it has achieved.
I want to shift to the other side of the microscope, ma'am. Right now, we have patients who are very well informed. They know what a LASIK is, what a silk is.
Too
what's
well
mine.
informed, I think.
They are too well informed or misinformed.
And too well informed for their own good.
Yes.
Because
yes.
what we learned over a period of 30, 40, 50 years, they are trying to learn from a 50 minutes podcast. And that doesn't work, believe me. Because it's not really giving the information which is totally correct. It would give you information, but not knowledge.
So it's like trying to learn to fly a plane using a video game.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that we should not be following podcasts. I'm not saying that we should not be listening to people or looking at all the information that is available to us. But we should also leave it to the treating doctor to decide for yourself what is going to be the best treatment option for you. There is no one cap fits all.
Yes.
Okay, there is no one solution for all the refractive problems that are there in the world. And therefore, there are different techniques which are still surviving. So only your treating doctor can decide what is going to work the best for you. And no one particular type or brand of surgery can be the best possible surgery which is applicable to everybody.
Okay.
And I think that point has to be put forward because there is a misconception in people's mind that a so-and-so procedure gives you supervision and that is the only procedure possible. So I sometimes find today people coming and asking that I want to do X procedure, I want to do Y procedure, are you using this brand of laser? Are you using this this latest brand? It does not matter. Even Mercedes, people driving in Mercedes or sitting in Mercedes come across accidents.
Yes.
It's also the person behind the wheel that counts and the condition of the roads.
Okay.
So both the things are important. Don't go. So this is an appeal to everyone who is listening to this. Don't go by a brand. Don't go by a procedure. Don't go by a person's word. Just think and trust your doctor and decide about yourself to get the best procedure done for you.
Ma'am, I just want to briefly ask you about how the patient's psychology or the patient's thinking has changed way back in 1994. When the patient, had
there is a
very
big change.
little information.
Big
Think of the
change.
patient who had no idea what the patient is undergoing. What was going through the patient's mind at that time?
It's so important, Raghav. This question is the best question that you have asked me. So when we started doing it, I remember I used to counsel my patients myself. And it used to take almost half an hour to examine a patient and 45 minutes to counsel a patient.
Yes.
Because we needed to tell them everything from the structure of the eye to the procedures that there were only 2 or 3 procedures available, but to give them all the options with the pros and cons and tell them exactly what they should expect and what they need pre and post. Today, most patients have bypassed all this. They just come and they ask you about what brand of laser are you using, are you doing so-and-so procedure, and what is the cost. They are not bothered about anything else. And that is something which is, in a way, not so good for the procedure as well as for the patient. For the doctor, sometimes it's an easy choice because if somebody comes asking for it, you want to give it. But it's not something that would always work the best in that person's favor.
I tell my patients that doing the surgery is the easiest job.
Exactly.
It's just a 5-minute procedure.
Absolutely.
In and out, surgery is done.
And that you're doing day in and out.
Yes. It's about what the patient is going to get after the procedure and what he faces. That's what we have to
and
discuss
what he
with the
understands
patient.
he is going to get after the procedure. Before he actually undergoes the procedure is what is important.
Okay.
So But it is an interesting field.
Oh, yes,
You get to come
definitely.
across all young, enthusiastic people in their very knowledgeable, very interesting. So more than the surgery part, I enjoy now interacting with the people who are coming to get the refractive surgery done for so many different variations, so many reasons. And the reasons have gone much beyond the cosmetic reason
Yes.
that was cited initially.
Yes.
It was never cosmetic. Believe me, laser refractive surgery was never solely cosmetic. It was branded as cosmetic because most people would do it for cosmetic purpose, to get married, to look better, to get a better prospects in terms of career, in terms of marriage. But today it is changing. So initially when there were only marriageable girls who were getting it done, it is now equal in gender.
Yes.
There are also older people who are more towards presbyopic age who want to get rid of their glasses simply because of the convenience and also because they can afford it now.
Yes. Yes.
And the downtime is really, really low. So if you do a laser procedure today, you're back to work tomorrow. So you're not really spending any valuable time just recovering from a procedure. And that has made all the difference.
That's a very wonderful point you made, ma'am, because I think most of our audience would not know that myopia can go up to minus 30 also.
Yes.
Yes. So
and
it
there
is-
are alternatives,
there are alternatives.
for treatment options there. So
So for a person who has a minus 20 power, I don't think it's a cosmetic procedure anymore.
not at all.
It becomes a necessity.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's
For the
it's-
quality and quantity of
Yes,
vision.
Yes, yes. Okay, ma'am. So if I go back to your journey, once you did your first PRK or surface ablation, and then you went on to, I'm sure, blade surgery.
Absolutely.
There were blades that were used back then.
That was the path which was started
Wow.
at that time.
No, were you not scared of the blade? Why? Because I'm the third generation of refractive surgeons, so I know that we don't use blades anymore now.
I would not say we don't use it,
At
but
least
to
in
the
our
bare
practice we
minimum.
don't.
Yes.
To a bare minimum.
Oh, you are the fortunate one.
Yes. So going on to that surface ablation PRK to a blade surgery to a LASIK surgery. So when was the term smile that you heard for the first time? Or was it called smile
So
back
it
then?
was not called Smile at that time. There was it was called Relax,
What
which
year
was
was that, ma'am?
refractive lens exchange,
What?
lenticule extraction.
What year was
It was
that?
called refractive lenticule extraction or Relax.
Relax.
And the first step to that was known as Flex,
Flex.
where we were still creating a flap, but we were peeling out the lenticule after opening the flap.
Okay.
So it was like a stepping stone
Okay.
from LASIK to get converted into Smile,
Okay.
which is lenticule extraction procedure.
Wow, so that must have been amazing, ma'am. I've seen one of ma'am's first smile surgery, which is the first smile surgery in the world. It's a very beautiful surgery. Trust me.
It is.
It is not much different from today's smile surgery. It was so beautiful back then. So what made you have that conviction कि इसमें कुछ है, इसमें कुछ बात है?
So the conviction was not there when we started because there were only 250 eyes done in Germany by Professor Secundo and Dr. Bloom. And the results were not really that exciting. The predictability and stability of those 250 eyes which were published were very remarkable. So it was right on the dot. But the vision recovery was really not up, as nice or as quick as what we were getting with even blade LASIK at that time. And that was the time when femtosecond lasers came, which were other than the intralaser. Intralaser, the original lasers, were not the best femtosecond lasers because the docking procedure was difficult and it used to have too much energy sometimes incident, and it was really not the best technology available at that time. Today, of course, the scenario has changed and it's again working really beautifully, those lasers. But the older generation lasers also used to give something like a task-like phenomenon where a lot of inflammation sometimes used to happen. So it was yet trying to find its bearing.
Okay.
That was the time when Zeiss came with a Visumax,
Yes.
which was making the flap pretty well and not raising the pressure in the eye to a great extent. So we were not getting red eyes. And it was a contact glass which was fitting on the cornea, which was giving a milder suction. And the patient was pretty comfortable doing the femtosecond laser procedure. And the predictability of the flaps were superb. So compared to a blade LASIK, the femto LASIK was like a paradigm.
Wow.
Because all the complications or most of the complications that were occurring or which we were fearing while doing the LASIK. So every time when we were using the microkeratome with the blade fitted in, every time we would put it on the patient's eye, there was a silent prayer in the mind that please God, let this go okay. Okay, because there were certain things which were not under your control.
Yes.
It was just happening because of the limitation of the mechanical microkeratome. So you could get a incomplete flap, you could get a free cap, you can get an irregular flap. So the entire experience that you have gained over the years were used up only to manage complications if they occurred. Otherwise, you were not really contributing much to
Now,
it.
coming on to complications, we all know complications is a part and parcel of refractive surgery. If someone is doing surgery, he's bound to have complications.
Yes.
If you don't have complications, you're not operating.
Absolutely.
So, very common questions जो patient हमसे पूछते हैं मैम कि chance of complications क्या है? So, what do you tell your patients about complications?
So I tell them the complications according to the procedure that they are going to require, and tell them the pros and cons of all the possible procedures that they can go through.
Okay.
So most common complication, I would say, or the complication which is not actually complication but a limitation because we are dealing with human body,
Yes.
is under or overcorrection,
Yes.
which is quite easily treated by either wearing glasses or contact lenses, or sometimes if there is enough moldability and tissue remaining, you can do a small touch-up. So that's not a really big complication. The most feared complication is of infection,
Yes.
which if cannot come under control can cause a major
Diminution of
consequence
vision. Okay.
and sometimes a loss of sight.
Okay.
But fortunately, the rate of complications in a corneal refractive surgery is much less. I would say 10% less than you can get with a contact lens wear. And with a contact lens wear, that chance you are taking every single day. So it gets multiplied to those many days every time you're putting your contact lens in. So if you talk about the safety profile of the corneal refractive surgery, it's a much safer option to wearing contact lenses every single day. The most common sequelae is dry eyes, which is occurring in the initial phases to an extent where you would want to put some drops. But later on, once the nerve regeneration occurs, the dry eye phenomenon is almost
That
nil.
happens with lenses also, ma'am.
That
dry eye.
happens with lenses to a big extent.
extent.
And with lenses, then it becomes irreversible, while this is reversible.
So, ma'am, I think you are the perfect person to ask this question. So, going on to the 90s, coming on to the 2025 now, has the rate of complications decreased?
It has decreased because the technology and techniques have evolved.
Yes.
So because there are better equipments available, the predictability and the safety profile of the entire corneal refractive surgery gamut
Yes.
has improved.
Because most
So
of the...
today it can give you even better quality and quantity of vision than what you can get with your glasses or contact lenses.
Wow. So, because most of the complications that I have read in my career, they are dated to 1990s, early 2000s.
Most of them were
Yes.
related to the use of microkeratome or the
Blades.
blade,
Yes.
which is going down every single day. But in a country like India, that is also a option which is still available to people who cannot afford this higher technology, which comes with a price.
Yes.
So, but if you're looking at a very safe procedure, femtoLASIK or the lenticular extraction procedures in its different forms, because now it's available at many different platforms.
Yes.
So originally there was only one platform which was available, which was by Carl Zeiss Visumax,
Yes.
which was known as the Smile. Now you have different companies giving it as different lenticle extraction procedures,
Okay.
like the Silk or the Clear. And those, all the platforms are trying to make it as nice and as available as possible for everybody's use.
Okay. So, ma'am, do you believe in this, that we are actually leaving LASIK or the flap-based procedures behind and going on to the flapless procedures? Is it the era of the flapless
So
procedure?
I would not say that it's going to be totally flapless all the time, but I'm sure majority of patients would opt for a flapless,
Yes.
bladeless procedure simply because it combines the best of both worlds. It is like doing a surface ablation or a PRK procedure. So the safety almost matching that, but without the pain. So the quick recovery of LASIK, but without a flap.
Okay,
So all the bad portions have been taken
Yes,
out.
yes.
All the good portions have been taken in. So it's like getting the best from both parents and evolving into a really
better
nice
gene pool.
child.
Okay, so is it akin to saying that the LASIK or the blade or the flap surgeries were like an open abdomen surgery where you cut
Yes,
the
this
entire
is like a
abdomen
laparoscopic
and it's like a
one.
laparoscopic, so you go in through a small keyhole.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've seen people going for scuba diving, getting married with all the makeup and everything on within a week of doing Smile.
Do you remember your first Smile patient?
Of course, I remember. I remember her name. I remember the smile on her face the next day I saw her.
Wow. Are you still in touch with her?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
She, in fact, she was a study patient.
Yes.
So she came with a lot of trepidation. And my heartbeats were even faster than hers.
I'm sure.
Because I was really not sure whether I'm going to be able to give a good result. But the previous experiences, so I started doing Smile in 2008. But I had corneal refractive surgery experience from 1994.
Wow.
So I knew that if complications occur, then I would be able to at least manage it to an extent where the patient would not lose the vision.
Okay.
So that was there at the back of my mind, giving me comfort. But still, when you're doing your first procedure, it's like your first kiss.
Of course.
It is exciting.
Yes.
It is increasing your heart rate.
Yes.
And it is fulfilling.
So, of course, ma'am, with refractive surgery procedures, you're dealing with eyes that are seeing well, right? There is no inherent problem in the eyes.
Yes.
There's just a change in shape or
Absolutely.
an increase in power. So, of course,
It's a big responsibility.
Yes. So, you have greater responsibility. So, I'll want to go into the physiological side of things, or rather, the deeper side of things. So, if you think there's a complication that occurs, and they do occur, let's not hide from that fact. Is it because of the surgeon, because of the patient? Do you think the surgeon also undergoes a similar type of reaction psychologically?
I think
to a complication?
psychologically, the surgeon undergoes even a worse trauma than the patient themselves.
Okay.
Because for the patient, probably they have trust in their doctors and they know that their doctors will help them
Yes.
out of this situation. But for the doctor, if they are not trained enough or if they are not confident enough,
Yes.
it's a nightmare. Because most times there are no complications.
Yes.
So you are expecting a smooth flow.
Yes.
And you are expecting the person coming back next day with a big smile on their
Yes.
face,
Yes.
which is not going to happen now. And that is very difficult to accept. That's
Yes.
why the training comes into picture. The training programs are on also because of that. Because I want them to realize that complications do occur.
Yes.
But if you are aware of them and if you know how to treat them, then you would be able to avoid a major complication for the patient for a lifetime.
Yes. And I think it leaves a scar on the surgeon also, every
It
complication.
does. I just want to add one thing that cornea is a very resilient
Forgiving
organ.
structure.
Very forgiving.
Yes.
So if you can, so some corneal surgeon had only said this, that you thaw it, you burn it, you
Freeze it.
you freeze it, you crush it, you incise it, you do whatever to it, it just brings back to normal, provided you have done the correct thing to it.
Yes.
So it is important that the moment you get a complication, say on table or post-op, you should handle it carefully and completely. If you can't, then take help of somebody who can.
Yes.
But if it's managed well, there are no problems for life. Having said that, I've treated my own daughter both eyes together.
Really?
Yes. And so, that conviction you can get only if you know that anything that comes your way, you would be able to face it.
Wow. Okay, so I go back
And this
to
was 12 years back.
I go back to Munna Bhai, where J. Asthana said, "अगर अपनी
Yes.
बेटी पे सर्जरी करें, आपका हाथ
Absolutely.
कांपेगा." So did your hand shake?
No.
Wow. You must
Because
have
she
some,
came with full confidence. It was her decision.
You were the best doctor for her, definitely, ma'am.
Best mother for sure.
So coming on to that, ma'am, you talked about training. So for our audience, you must understand that if you go to a refractive surgeon, he or she has undergone rigorous treatment. Why? Rigorous training. Why? Because getting a training in refractive surgery is not very easy. Why? Because it's a very cost-intensive procedure, cost-intensive training, because the machinery for learning is very expensive, not available everywhere. So I think there are only
Also not available in the medical colleges.
medical colleges. Yes.
So, the ground where we learn our basics,
Yes.
they don't have refractive surgery option to treat.
So basically,
To
someone
teach.
who's a refractive surgeon has undergone his or her MBBS. Then he or she has done a post-graduation ophthalmology, that is 3 years non-specific ophthalmology. Then undergone another course in refractive surgery.
Yes.
We're talking about 13, 14 years
So it's like a
training.
super specialty.
Wow. So, ma'am, tell me more about the refractive surgery training that you do, that didactic LASIK
So
training.
what we do is both the types of training. So we have these LASIK training courses on one hand, where we do a group training of about 20 odd doctors, where we teach them right from history to the future of refractive
Yes.
surgery as didactic lectures. We make them do wet labs on both sides, and I make them do on patients, hands-on. So in my presence, they work on the patient.
Okay.
And this has been going on since 1996, this training
Wow.
program. Initially, we were doing 3 or 4 in a year. Now we have limited it to 2 per year.
This one was the oldest refractive
And
surgery training.
Yes, this
course
has
in
been
India?
going on. That's why
In
this
India
is
at
the
least?
77. The
Wow.
next one is in February, the 78th one.
Wow. So,
So
so getting hold to these refractive machinery is very difficult. Like ma'am said, medical colleges में facilities नहीं होते. It's not possible because it's
It
very
is.
expensive. The machines are expensive to procure and even more expensive to maintain.
और अगर आप खरीद रहे हो मशीन, यू वांट टू नो फर्स्ट कि ये चलेगा कि नहीं मेरे हाथ
Yes.
से, whether I'm going to get good results,
Yes.
and whether it's worth. So what is the finance behind it?
Yes.
How to get patients? How to examine them? Who are the correct people? All those things need to be known before you venture into something so big, because it may be taking up, your whole savings and
Yes.
your parents' savings.
Yes.
It's an expensive proposition.
Okay, so ma'am, I am privileged. I'm working at an institute which has all the machinery.
Yes.
You have done your hard work. You've been in this so many years. But ma'am, what do you advise or give your 2 cents to someone who's just done his ophthalmology and now wants to become a refractive surgeon? What should he or she do?
So first of all, explore. Go and see at least 3-4 different refractive surgery clinics. See how they function. See whether the patients are, what are the expectations of the patients, how they are treated, what are the results. Learn about the economics, the finance. Look at your own position, how you are placed, whether you are in a city, whether you are going to drain a population which is going to be big enough to be able to afford refractive surgery.
Yes.
And then only invest and not before that. Because otherwise, you may not be able to take the correct decision, one. So where you have to say no, you may still be tempted to say yes. And 2, you may not be able to upgrade your lasers or your equipments in time because you can't do enough volume. So initially, make sure that you are going to be able to sustain that yourself and that laser with enough work. Or else, a good idea is to do a group practice initially. So you
Makes
invest in one laser amongst 4-5 like-minded ophthalmologists. And then once the individual
enough
practice
capital.
is developed,
Yes.
And once you're more confident about your own ability to run a laser center, maybe you can start. Otherwise, what happens is also that there are too many laser centers in one vicinity, and they end up competing with each other.
Yes.
And everybody is a loser then.
Agreed. So, ma'am, coming on to the topic of artificial intelligence and machine learning, AI/ML, which is, I think it is being used and thrown around very loosely. So, we hear about AI in medicine and ophthalmology. It's something that is upcoming. Do you think that in the near or probably the distant future, will doctors be replaced by robots?
I don't think so.
No?
Not totally.
Not totally?
No. The human aspect of doctors is a very important thing.
Yes.
So if you are afraid, if you are sad, you are not going to be content by some mechanical voice telling you that these are your options. In 2 days' time, you are going to get better, and this is just a passing phase.
Yes.
You want a hug, you want a touch,
Yes.
and that is provided by the doctor.
So, I totally.
So I totally believe
agree.
that machines cannot replace human beings, but they can improve the way a human being can perform. So we have to make use of AI.
Yes.
We have to make use of machine learning. There is no going away from it because it's going to make us better doctors.
Agreed.
So all the equipments, all the technological advances is actually making us and helping us to treat our patients better. But we should not leave the human side of it because that's what we are going to be contributing.
So
in
let me
future.
rephrase. You mean to say that a doctor, of course, is made of intelligence and emotion. So AI is artificial intelligence, but you can't have artificial emotion. You have to have that emotion.
I hope they don't come
They
up
don't.
with that.
And I don't
also.
think they can because even I believe that along with having that technical know-how and that intelligence, that emotion is very, very
It is.
important. Why? Because I'll tell you from the perspective of I was a trainee, let's say 10 years back. If I'm doing my initial cataract surgery, if I have my intelligence, I will keep doing my training core surgery. But if I have that emotion, I will know when to stop.
Absolutely.
So I think knowing
So
when
well
to
said.
yes, so knowing when to stop, when to not stop, when to talk to a patient, only the emotional side of a doctor can know when we speak to a patient and when we tell the patient and counsel the patient. That intelligence alone cannot do.
So the day the patient becomes a robo,
yes, that's
robos will be able to rule the world.
100%, 100%. Okay, so coming back to, so I can't get over the fact that you've operated on your daughter, ma'am. It must be I don't know, what was the night prior?
So both of us were calm. And she, in fact, came from school, got it done in a school uniform only.
Wow.
And next day she went to school. And she came back and showed in the evening.
Wow.
So it was, of course, after going home, she was like lying in my lap for like a couple of hours. But that was the only really touching part that happened. Otherwise, it was business as usual.
Wow, I can only imagine. I don't know. I don't think. So I remember when I had gone for my interview for my fellowship at Center for Sight. So I was asked, what do you want from this fellowship? I said, I want to be confident enough to be able to do cataract surgery on my father. So of course I am confident now.
Today.
But yes, today.
Yes.
But yes, it does take a lot of toil, a lot of emotional baggage. Why? Because there are certain times when you have those down days as a surgeon. Days are not absolutely perfect. You do have cases which don't turn out according to what you want. There are complications. And that's when the human side of doctors comes out. What do you say to that, ma'am?
Yes, but that happens even with a non-relative. So
Yes. So that's, again, I want to iterate that yes, if there is a complication, the surgeon is having an equally bad day. I have known surgeons who don't sleep for a week continuously if there's a complication.
yes.
And a complication is an accident.
I'm one of
can
them.
occur.
I can't sleep if I come across the complications. But that happened. I thought with age I would become better, but it's worsening.
Okay. So, ma'am, I want to know your thoughts on. We know that myopia is something that's prevalent. It's everywhere in our society, more so in Southeast Asian countries and in India and other countries in Asia. So I just want to know that we do see that every second child that's coming into our clinic now is either wearing or now requiring glasses. Why do you think? And also, do you think this has increased post-COVID?
So, I think this is a concern for all the parents.
Yes.
Because parents also feel that nowadays children are getting glasses, where in previous times there were not so many children who were wearing glasses.
Yes.
So typically if you see in a classroom, at least 30-40%
I think more.
of children are wearing glasses, and some maybe more who are requiring.
Yes.
So it's a big number, and it was not there before. Or was it there before and was
were
not
not
getting diagnosed is a question. But definitely the myopia prevalence is increasing.
Yes.
And according to an estimate, it's going to become even more. And by 2050,
More than
we are
half.
going to have an epidemic of myopia.
Wow.
So it means that there is something which is predisposing to it. And the most common thing is a lot of near work. And post-COVID in children, because they got so used to working and looking
Screens.
at their phones and now owning one,
Yes.
because most parents have given their old phones to the to children now to play or to make them eat whatever they were getting fed,
Yes.
and to in general keep them out of their hair. So I would in fact blame the parents more rather than the children for the myopia prevalence. Also, there is a great increase in myopia happening over years.
Yes.
So from the child, when the child starts wearing glasses to almost till he achieves puberty and beyond, the myopia sometimes progresses exponentially. And the main reason for this is too much of near work and non-exposure of sunlight. So vitamin D is a very important part of preventing myopia from progressing a lot.
Okay.
So outdoor activities, playing outside, which were getting done a lot when there were no TVs, no phones, no computers to play with. All of us as children have just played outside. And there were very few of us who actually were wearing glasses or had so much progression. So we do need to take care. When a parent comes in and says कि समझाओ ना इसे, ये तो फोन ही लेके बैठता है, I actually say कि समझना आपको है, because you are the one giving the phone to the child. The child cannot buy a phone by themselves. So please make sure कि ये शॉर्टकट ना लिया जाए, बिकॉज ये शॉर्टकट लेने में आपके चिल्ड्रन को बहुत बहुत नुकसान है.
But my take on this is that myopia definitely has increased over the past decades. And so Adam and Eve had no near work, right? So our eyes were meant only for distance
Sure.
work. Everything that is near is man-made.
So this is also evolution.
Yes, evolution. So books, hardbound, paperbound, or tablets, screens. But it becomes a double-edged sword. How do you stop or tell a parent or explain to the parent that एक
मत
तरफ से हम बोल
पढ़ाओ.
रहे हैं आप उसको स्क्रीन बंद करो, बट स्कूल में बोल रहे हैं कि आपको अपना देयर आर स्कूल्स, देयर आर आई नो देयर आर हाई एंड स्कूल्स इन दिल्ली दैट
Yes,
एनकरेज ऑल वर्क ओनली ऑन देयर टैबलेट्स.
Yeah, you would not believe, मेरी जो housemaid है, उसके लड़के को all the homework comes on parents' phone.
यस.
So from that phone, they don't send a printed sheet. It comes only via WhatsApp on her phone. Okay, so naturally
let me
they
stop
have
you there.
to
That
see
becomes
that.
very interesting. Why? Because going to training in MBBS or MS when you were a student vis-a-vis when we were students. So do you think that we can do our training without WhatsApp right now? Or can you run your hospital without WhatsApp right now?
So you can't run a hospital without computers today.
Yes.
But there are ways to use computers. So everybody who needs to use monitors, computers, laptops, iPad or whatever needs to follow the 20-20-20 rule.
Yes.
And the 20-20-20 rule says, it's a simple rule, every 20 minutes of doing any such intensive work, take just 20 seconds break to look at 20 feet distance and blink as often as you can. So simple rule, if it's followed, that also prevents a lot of such problems of dry eyes as well as progression of myopia.
Okay.
Difficult to implement because we usually tend to forget.
Yes.
When you are working, when you are engrossed in a game, you don't remember where the time flies and you don't blink enough. It's also leading to a lot of shoulder and neck issues,
Yes.
which is together known as the computer syndrome. And this needs everybody who needs to work on monitors, computers, phones need to know about and be careful about.
Agreed, ma'am, because there are so many IT professionals coming to us who tell us that we work 16 hours on the screen, and 16 hours out of 24 hours, I don't know when they're sleeping, firstly.
Exactly.
And then out of
and when
16
are they eating?
Yes. So our normal blink rate is 12 to 16 times per minute. So once you're looking at a screen and we're engrossed, we are blinking much less. So of course we are bound to have that dryness. So do you encourage all these people who are working on the screens to use lubricating eye drops? Should they self-medicate?
So if they can't follow the 20-20-20 rule, at least use the lubricating eye drops so that you'll remain more comfortable and use them in a way where you are not harming your eyes. So make sure that you are not touching the tip. Make sure that you are changing the bottle after a month's use. And make sure that you are using them regularly so that the bottle doesn't even go beyond 1 month.
Okay, I'll touch on to a little more controversial topic, ma'am, but you don't answer it as medical advice. Just answer it to me as whether you would use it or not. So there are a number of patients, I would say majority, middle-aged patients who come to us and they get us a number of drops, which are Ayurvedic formulations, homeopathic formulations. I have nothing against Ayurveda or homeopathy, and I'm being very clear that I actually, I will not say they are. I would say they run parallel to our medicine field, and you can't deny. But do you think that these drops will have any ill effect on the eyes?
So I personally don't like to use.
Okay.
And there are reasons. One is sometimes the formulation is not correct.
Yes.
So they can cause harm to the eye.
Yes.
Secondly, always the mechanism of action is not clear. So unless I know how it is going to work, I don't like to use that product. And I also don't believe that something has only good effects, like our old Hindi cinema actors or heroes and heroines, and no bad effects at all. So our old Hindi cinema actors were all of the below. They were good sons, they were good husbands, they were good persons, they were good fighters, they were good dancers, they were everything good.
Yes.
And no evil part at all. And we all know that such people don't exist. It's a myth.
Yes.
Similarly, we cannot have in all the good effects with no other effects at all in any of the pathis. And therefore, anything that you use needs to be logically and thoughtfully used.
Yes, because yes, definitely, eyes are the window to the world, and of course, without eyes or without sight, it's very difficult to live it. I think it is one of the most difficult handicaps to deal with if someone is visually challenged, and we know how difficult it is, and especially being ophthalmologists. And
No, and you also know there was such a popular brand which was banned.
yes,
And for a reason. So it does not happen without reasons.
yes,
Right?
okay, ma'am. So if I come back again to the myopia pandemic, so do you see that the need for refractive surgery is going to increase? And also, I want to add that after COVID, we at least in our practice have seen a surge in the requirement or the demand for refractive surgery. Why do you feel that is?
So one of the reasons is, of course, the more prevalence of myopia.
Yes.
The second reason is that the techniques today have become really good. So sometimes you can get better quality and quantity of vision than your own glasses or contact lenses.
Yes.
And therefore people prefer that. Plus, there is also the convenience of not needing to use glasses. And the fourth thing is that contact lenses can answer some of the problems of glasses of magnification or restriction of field of vision. But contact lenses themselves have other set of complications possible, including allergies, infections, and permanent dryness. And on top of that, cost of the contact lens, cost of the glasses,
yes.
cost of the solutions, and to maintain them properly, to keep them safe, to make sure that you're washing your hands before handling them.
Yes.
Everything is a
Hygiene.
task.
Yes.
Especially if you are somebody who is a high-flying executive.
Okay.
You are one day here, tomorrow there, and flying all the time. The chance of dryness also increases a lot.
Yes.
So for such people, they find refractive surgery to be a very easy procedure
Yes.
because it's giving them that freedom from glasses without any much, tags attached to it.
Okay. So, ma'am, a lot of patients do come to us. One of their questions once we are counseling them for refractive surgery is that, will I be able to undergo further surgeries if I ever require, let's say, cataract or a retina surgery after LASIK or a SMILE? What's your take on that, ma'am?
So corneal refractive surgery is done, as the name suggests, only on the cornea. And the cornea is the first lens of the eye. So if you look at your eye, the central black portion is covered by a transparent layer. It's just like the glass of your watch. So your eye appears blue, brown, only because of the color of the iris, which is behind that cornea. So it's exactly like the dial. The dial color tells you that this watch is black or blue or golden, but it is covered always by a transparent glass. That glass is what is getting worked upon. So the rest of your watch is remaining untouched. So whatever happens to a normal eye can still happen to your eye after the procedure. So if it's going to develop cataracts at 70, it will still develop. If it's going to develop glaucoma, retinal problem, presbyopia, reading glasses requirement, anything and everything that a normal eye can get, you are also going to get.
Okay.
But all the treatments that a normal eye can undergo, you can also undergo, because essentially your eye remains the same.
And also, I want to bust one myth that in an eye transplant, which is commonly said as an eye transplant, we don't transplant the eye.
Yeah.
It is this glass of the watch or the cornea which is transplanted. We don't transplant the entire eye as a whole. Yes, there have been some early research that is trying to give us a retinal implant, but those are still, I think, in the early phase of research, and they will probably take some time.
And it's sad that very few people have asked me this question before undergoing corneal refractive surgery, whether they can still donate their eyes. And my answer is yes. You can still donate your eyes, and your eyes can still be very useful. So please pledge for eye donation after your death.
And before I sign off, if not an ophthalmologist, what would you have been?
Oh, I would have done a lot of things, which I'm still doing as a side thing. I would probably have been a choreographer.
Oh,
I
wow.
love dancing.
Yes,
I do choreograph dances at a small level just for
Yes.
family functions and all. And I'm still persisting in practicing on my own and looking and having audience also as one person myself. But
No, ma'am,
that's something that probably would have been an alternate career.
No,
for
we've seen
me.
you at our get-together, ma'am. You have a very wonderful choreography, ma'am. It's amazing.
Thanks.
And of course, for ma'am's patients, there are a number of patients throughout the world. I hope you could see through the lens and see inside Dr. Rupal Shah and beyond an ophthalmologist. Thank you so much, ma'am, for
Thank you,
being-
Raghav, for this was such an opportunity. Thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am,
much.
The honor was all mine. It was so amazing to speak with you. And I hope we catch up again soon. And so here we are signing off with the queen, or the mother of smile in India and the
Bye-bye.
world. Thank you.